faulty constructions that cause severe disasters for people. Because of the negligence and corruption of those in the government, incidents like these are unavoidable. And what's even more horrifying is that it claims many lives. In this video, I will show you the biggest construction failures in the world. Here, you'll see a building that was expected to last for hundreds of years, but suddenly collapsed in just a few seconds. You will also see bridges here that everyone thought were safe, but suddenly gave way in the middle of rush hour. And that's just some of what you'll witness. Because of this, we've prepared a lot of entries about construction failures. But before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. This is a big help for us content creators. Thank you very much, and now let's get started. Leaning Tower of Pisa. When talking about the most famous mistakes in the history of architecture, the Leaning Tower of Pisa is definitely included. At first glance, it looks like a carefully planned masterpiece, an elegant bell tower designed to showcase the beauty of Italy. But if you look a little longer, you'll notice something unusual. And the funny thing is, it wasn't intentional. The project started in 1173 with the goal of building an independent bell tower for the Pisa Cathedral. But even before the third floor was finished, a problem already appeared. The ground underneath was not stable because the foundation was shallow, only about 3 meters deep, and it couldn't handle the weight of the structure. That's when the tower started to lean. And even before it was completely finished, the flaw was already obvious. It was tilted or leaning. Because of political unrest and the wars that happened, construction was halted for almost a century. And in a way, this actually helped. The ground had time to gradually settle. That's why the tower didn't collapse right away. But as construction continued, the tilt actually got worse. In 1372, after almost 2 centuries, the tower was finally completed. But it was no longer straight. It now had a permanent tilt that became its trademark. As centuries passed, the angle of its tilt became even deeper. Experts have tried several times to fix and stabilize the structure. There was major restoration until the 1990s. Starting in 1993 and lasting until 2001, they used modern engineering techniques to reduce the tilt and ensure that it would not completely collapse. As a result, what was once considered a major failure became an extraordinary symbol of Italy. Imagine, a construction mistake is now visited by millions of tourists every year. The Leaning Tower of Pisa reminds us that even the mistakes of the past can become masterpieces in the present, admired by the whole world. Lotus Riverside Complex, Shanghai. In 2009, one of the most dramatic construction failures in modern history made headlines around the world. The collapse of a building at the Lotus Riverside Complex in Shanghai. It was like a giant domino slowly toppling over, shocking and terrifying. The Lotus Riverside Complex was built as a symbol of China's modern urban progress. Sleek and tall buildings were planned to serve as homes for the middle class and families seeking a new life in the city. But on June 27, 2009, one of the high-rise buildings suddenly collapsed. What's chilling is that there was no earthquake, no typhoon, no natural disaster. Purely human error and negligence were the real causes. It all started with the excavation for the complex's underground garage. As the massive amount of soil was being removed, the foundation gradually weakened. And because the building was already standing on unstable ground, it became even more problematic. It was like pulling the support out from under a giant pillar. Add to that the heavy rain before the incident, which soaked and softened the ground. That's why the foundation couldn't support the building's weight, until the moment came when the ground gave way and the entire building tilted. Surprisingly, the building remained intact. It didn't break apart as expected. It was like a huge box that had been toppled over, but it was clear that its contents and integrity were already destroyed. Although only a few people died directly, the collapse of this building caused great alarm. This served as a strong warning against rapid and reckless urban development, especially in places like Shanghai, which are filled with high-rise projects. From that incident, Lotus Riverside became a symbol of the danger that when speed is prioritized over quality and safety, disaster will be the result. It's a clear reminder. A building, no matter how beautiful, is just a giant trap if the design isn't careful and the foundation isn't strong. Hyatt Regency Walkway collapse, Kansas City. On the night of July 17, 1981, the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Kansas City witnessed one of the worst structural failure tragedies in American history. Instead of being a place of fun and dancing, that hotel suddenly turned into a nightmare that claimed more than 100 lives. The Hyatt Regency was once a source of pride because of its grand lobby and modern design. Its main attraction was the two suspended walkways hanging in the air, connected from the second floor and fourth floor, floating above the ballroom where parties and dances were held. It was like an architectural statement that showcased the skill and ambition of the designers. But that night, while hundreds of people were dancing and celebrating, the walkways suddenly collapsed. In an instant, the two steel and concrete bridges collapsed, falling straight onto the people celebrating below. The once lively music was replaced by loud screams and the crashing of steel and concrete. More than 114 people died and over 200 more were injured. Many of them suffered severe injuries. Because of the number of victims, this was considered one of the deadliest building collapses in modern America. When experts examined it, they found that a seemingly small but very significant design flaw was the root cause of the tragedy. In the original plan, only one set of hanger rods would be used to simultaneously support the walkways. But while the project was being built, this was changed, and the supports for the second floor and fourth floor walkways were separated. The problem was the weight that the connection points had to carry was doubled, a load they couldn't handle. In the end, they gave way and brought down the entire structure. What happened was not just an accident. It was a lesson that opened the eyes of the entire construction and engineering industry. It showed that no matter how beautiful or ambitious the design is, if the proper process and safety are neglected, it can lead to serious disaster. The giant tank that suddenly exploded. Imagine a hotel lobby that looks like an actual aquarium. In the middle of it, there's a very tall cylinder tank filled with colorful tropical fish. That's the Aquadome in Berlin, an architectural masterpiece that became one of the most famous attractions in the city. Built inside the Radisson Blu Hotel, it stands nearly 82 feet tall. Made from thick acrylic, it can hold millions of liters of water and more than 1,500 tropical fish. The hotel's elevator itself passes through the middle of the tank, so anyone riding it feels as if they're sinking under the sea. Every year, thousands of tourists and locals visit this place. For many, this symbolizes Berlin's modern innovation and unique design. But in December 2022, the unexpected suddenly happened. In the middle of the night, without warning, the entire tank exploded. Millions of liters of water suddenly erupted. It caused widespread flooding in the hotel and nearby roads. The area was filled with water and debris, and the damage reached millions of dollars. The saddest part is that hundreds of tropical fish died in the incident. The scene that was once full of color and life was replaced by chaos and destruction. But what was the real cause of the tragedy? Not an earthquake, not an explosion, but a structural weakness, right in the materials of the aquarium itself. Over time, the acrylic used in the tank wall developed micro-fractures, tiny cracks that are almost invisible to the eye. The changes in temperature and the intense water pressure accelerated its deterioration until it finally gave way. The Aquadome, once considered a masterpiece of modern design, suddenly became a reminder that no matter how beautiful and impressive a project is, if the materials are not strong and safe, it can end in disaster. The Vasa, the warship that sank on its maiden voyage, If there's an example of a massive project wrapped in ambition but struck by tragedy, nothing beats Sweden's Vasa ship. During the time of King Gustavus Adolphus, the Vasa was built as a symbol of the power of the Swedish Navy. It was supposed to be the most powerful warship of its time. It was filled with cannons, had a tall structure, and was designed to strike fear into the enemy. But on August 1628, on its very first voyage from the port of Stockholm, the unexpected happened. The ship had barely traveled a mile when it suddenly tilted and sank. The magnificent ship didn't even make it to the open sea. Right there near the shore, tragedy struck and took it away. The problem was the ship's very design. The upper part was too heavy because of the numerous cannons and decorations, while the lower part lacked ballast or weight that should have served as a counterbalance. A strong gust of wind was all it took to tip the balance, and that was the end of Vasa. In just a few minutes, the ship that the whole country was proud of sank, along with the lives of dozens of crew members on board. This incident became a vivid example of how great the consequences can be when basic engineering principles are ignored in favor of luxury and showmanship. The Vasa remained underwater for more than 300 years, and in 1961 it was raised again and carefully preserved. Today it can be seen in a museum in Stockholm, not as a symbol of military strength, but as a reminder of the importance of proper design, safety, and balance in any project. The Teton Dam, the stream that became a deluge. In the 1970s, the United States proudly introduced a new project, the Teton Dam in Idaho. It was designed to prevent flooding, provide irrigation, and supply water to the surrounding communities. It was said to be modern and state-of-the-art for its time. But on June 5, 1976, everything changed. As the reservoir was being filled for the very first time, small water leakages were noticed in the dam. At first, it seemed like it could still be controlled. The engineers tried to fill and fix it, but the problem was quickly getting worse. Just a few hours later, the Teton Dam gave way. A giant gap formed, and more than 250,000 acre-feet of water gushed out. A massive flood surged straight toward the towns of Wilford and Rexburg. It was like a giant wall of water that destroyed houses, farms, bridges, and roads. Almost all the properties in its path were submerged or swept away. Unfortunately, 11 people died, and the damage left behind amounted to billions of dollars. Even nature was not spared, as livestock and vast farmlands were swept away by the raging flood. The root of the tragedy? Experts discovered that the dam was built using extremely porous rocks that easily let water in. It gradually weakened from the inside until it finally collapsed. The Teton Dam is a harsh lesson that no matter how good the plan is, if there are flaws in the materials and warnings are ignored, a project that is supposed to provide security can actually become the source of one of the worst disasters. The Sampung department store, a mall turned grave. In the 1990s, one of the symbols of South Korea's rapid rise was the Sampung department store in Seoul. At first glance, it looked like a symbol of a modern city. 5 floors of luxury, filled with shops, high-end boutiques, and thousands of shoppers every day. But behind its shiny image, there was a hidden grave mistake. The building was originally designed as a 4-story office. But while it was being built, the owners decided to turn it into a 5-story shopping mall. Because of this, some important columns were removed and heavy facilities like a huge air conditioning unit were added to the roof, which the foundation couldn't support. Warnings appeared even before the disaster. For several months, large cracks appeared on the walls and floors. But instead of closing the building for repairs, the management chose to continue operations because they didn't want to lose income. And then the worst moment came, June 29, 1995. While the mall was full of shoppers, a loud rumbling sound suddenly occurred. The floors collapsed one after another, like a house made of cards. In just a few minutes, the entire building disappeared under its own weight. More than 500 people died and almost 1,000 were injured. This made it one of the deadliest disasters of a collapsed building in modern history. Investigation revealed the cause was poor planning, design violations, and excessive cost-cutting. The businessmen increased profits, even at the cost of thousands of lives. Today, the 10 department store collapse remains a dark reminder. In the world of construction, when greed comes before safety, what you reap is not profit, but tragedy. Hard Rock Hotel collapse, luxury that ended in tragedy. At first, the Hard Rock Hotel in New Orleans was promised to be a new symbol of luxury in the city. It had plans for a rooftop bar, a swimming pool with a view of the skyline, and 5-star amenities for guests. Since construction began in 2018, residents and business owners were filled with excitement. They were looking forward to the completion of the new landmark, but instead of a grand opening, a nightmare happened. On October 12, 2019, a few months before the scheduled inauguration, the upper floor of the building suddenly collapsed. It collapsed downward, swallowing the lower part, and left a pile of steel and concrete. 3 workers died, many were injured, and the entire city was stunned. When the cause was investigated, it turned out there was a major error in the design and construction. In an effort to cut costs, thinner steel beams were used on the 16th and 17th floors. These steel beams were not enough to support the weight of the structure being built. As time passed and more materials were added, the weight gradually caused it to give way until it eventually collapsed. It was also found that oversight and safety protocols were lacking. This means that inspections were insufficient and many warnings were ignored. The Hard Rock Hotel tragedy became a harsh lesson for the construction industry, showing that cutting corners in the wrong way can result in the loss of lives. Instead of becoming a symbol of luxury and success, it became a monument to negligence. Walkie-talkie skyscraper. In 2014, a new skyscraper in London made headlines for a strange problem. It is known as the Walkie-talkie building because of its shape, which resembles a handheld radio. At first glance, the architecture is impressive, modern, unique, and instantly recognizable in the city skyline. But there is an unexpected flaw. Its concave glass shape acts like a giant magnifying glass. Whenever sunlight hits it, the light reflects and goes in a single direction, directly onto the street below. The result is, it feels like you're under an industrial oven. There were even times when the heat on the street itself reached over 243 degrees Fahrenheit. A Jaguar car literally had parts of its body melt because of the extreme heat. Street signs burned, tiles warped, and even pedestrians are complaining because they feel like they're being cooked while walking. Because of this, people in London called it the fry scraper. The developers were forced to come up with an immediate solution. They installed sunshades to reduce the glare and prevent dangerous heat. But before this could be done, this building became a vivid reminder that even the most ambitious designs can lead to unexpected disasters when its impact on the environment is not taken into consideration. In the end, the walkie-talkie became an example of how an architectural marvel can pose real-life dangers when simple scientific principles are overlooked. Tacoma Narrows Bridge, known for collapsing after swaying dramatically. On November 7, 1940, all of America witnessed one of the most famous mistakes in the history of engineering: the collapse of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge in Washington state. It was known as Galloping Gertie because of the unusual movement of the bridge whenever there were strong winds. It literally moved like a wave in the sea. The bridge was built to be modern and cost-effective. The design was sleek. It was lighter than earlier suspension bridges and was considered a masterpiece of modern architecture. But there was a major problem. It was too aerodynamic. Instead of withstanding the wind, the structure acted like an airplane wing, catching the wind and oscillating. On the day of the tragedy, the wind hit almost 40 miles per hour. At first, the bridge twisted and vibrated, but as the wind grew stronger, its movement became even more dangerous. The motorists passing by were terrified. They fled immediately, leaving behind a car with a dog, which became a symbol of the tragedy. After several hours of intense oscillation, the structure could no longer withstand the continuous twisting. In front of cameras and witnesses, the bridge finally collapsed and plunged into the cold waters of Puget Sound. The collapse of the Tacoma Narrows was not just a local disaster, but a major lesson for the entire world of engineering. Scientists realized that their study of the effects of aerodynamics on large structures was lacking. Because of this, a new discipline in civil engineering emerged that focused on wind resistance and structural stability. Today, the tragedy of Galloping Gertie is not only recorded as a failure, but also as an important turning point that changed the way bridges are designed around the world. Aon Center Marble Crisis. In 1973, the Aon Center was built in Chicago, which was then known as the Standard Oil Building. It was a modern skyscraper with a slick design wrapped in white Italian Carrara marble, a material that has long been a symbol of luxury and beauty. For the architects, this marble would give the building a unique identity. But within just a year, problems began to emerge. The marble panels on the outside of the building showed deep cracks, and some even detached and fell from above. Just imagine blocks of stone weighing over 300 pounds falling from the sky, a huge threat to people passing by on the street below. What caused it? The answer is Chicago's extreme climate. In this city, people experience extreme heat during summer and intense cold in winter. Because of this, the marble repeatedly expands and contracts. Over time, the thin slabs could no longer withstand the stress from the changing temperatures. Many times, they tried to fix the problem using metal reinforcements, but this did not resolve the issue. In the end, the building owners were forced to remove all the marble panels and replace them with stronger granite from Mount Airy. The project cost over $80 million, almost half the original value of the entire building. The Aon Center marble crisis served as a major lesson in the world of architecture. Beauty is not enough if it doesn't fit the environment. It showed that no matter how expensive or famous the materials are, if they are not suitable for the conditions of the place, they can cause tragedy and enormous costs. Until now, the building is still standing. But behind its sturdy granite remains the story of one of the most expensive mistakes in the history of modern construction. Sydney Opera House, a dream turned nightmare. If there's a building that immediately comes to mind when Australia is mentioned, it's definitely the Sydney Opera House. Even from afar, you can already see its shape, like a giant white sail hanging by the edge of the sea. It is one of the most famous buildings in the world, but the story behind its construction is full of chaos, mistakes, and excessive costs. In 1957, the Danish architect Jørn Utzon won. In a competition to design the building, the plan was simple. It would be finished within 4 years, and the total cost would be 7 million Australian dollars. But over time, it became clear events were far from expected. The unique design of the Opera House, especially the iconic concrete shells, brought almost endless engineering problems. It was repeatedly redesigned during construction, and each change added years and millions in costs. By 1966, Utzon was forced to resign due to conflicts with the government and project officials. The building was left to other architects who finished the work, but not according to his original plan. The building was finally completed in 1973, 14 years after construction began. The initial 7 million budget soared to more than 100 million Australian dollars. That's almost 13 times bigger than the initial plan. The problems weren't just about money. When the building opened, the poor acoustics inside were immediately noticed. For a building meant for music and opera, this was the most painful mistake. Many performers complained that the sound was hard to hear, and the design was not suitable for performances. Because of this, they had to spend almost 300 million Australian dollars for renovations in the following decades. The acoustics were improved, new panels were added, and the interior was renovated to live up to the building's reputation. Today, the Sydney Opera House is still recognized as a United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization World Heritage Site and a symbol of Australia. But its true story serves as a warning. Excessive ambition and the desire to create something unique can lead to extreme delays, excessive costs, and great disappointment before finally achieving success.